Hi everyone. In this video course, I'm going to show you how to do perspective section elevations, where half of the drawing is going to be in elevation and then the other half is going to be in section. And it's going to be also in perspective at the same time. And then I'm also going to show you how to create a display style setting. I actually made a previous video setting on how to create a display style setting like this, but I'm just going to recap it again. And so let me just toggle really fast between these display style settings. It's all the same, just with a different background color. And so you see we have like black and white and green and magenta. There's so many options, but they all follow the same display style setting that I'll show you. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you final exports with annotations and grid lines and things that just kind of help the layout of these types of drawings. So let's just go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we need to do is create a clipping plane. And I already have one created and I have it placed right here. And I also made a layer. It's really important to have a clipping plane layer. But just to recap, I'll do a clipping plane and I'll select the vertical option, right? And start of edge, just click wherever you want. Doesn't matter. You can move it around later, but I can go across and I can go up. And it doesn't matter what size you do. Okay. So just make sure you place your clipping plane where you want. And I did the vertical option, and I always have it on the clipping plane layer. Okay. So that's number one. Now, number two is that before we actually make the cut and do the clipping plane settings and the perspective section elevation, we want to split what we want to show versus what we don't want to show. And it's actually very simple. So I want half of the drawing to show, or to be more specific, I want half of the elevation to show right here, whatever the front face is. So I don't have to worry about anything else. We're not going to split the entire model in half. We're just going to split the most foreground geometry. So in this scenario, right, I want to take like this and maybe this frame here, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to isolate it. Okay, so now this is what I have, right? And what I want to do is I want to split this, right? So let me just draw a line and I don't know, I'll put it some random part right here. It's really up to you. It doesn't have to be down the middle. And I'll tell you when you should have it down the middle. But if it's something flat, both in elevation and in like on the roof, it's flat. It doesn't matter where you cut it. It's always best to do it in down the middle because it just seems more, I guess, aesthetically pleasing and more direct. But it's up to you. So let me go here and just extrude this down. So the first thing that I want to do is I actually want to split this right here. So I do split or Boolean split because these are solids and I want to keep the solid definition. So Boolean split, I want to split this, right? Enter, this is my cutting object. And so that's split. There's always going to be a duplicate, right? That's that and that's that. So now the next thing that I want to split off is this geometry right here, okay? So I'm going to do a P line, right? I'm going to go from here to here and here and press enter, right? So I have this right here. This is just arbitrary and I could hold shift to extrude both sides like this, right? And then if I do Boolean split, okay? Now, you see I have this here, I have it there. There's always gonna be a duplicate, I can delete it. Okay, and that's it, okay? So this is all I wanna maintain. So if I do unisolate, so now the next thing that we need to do is we need to modify our clipping plane and we need to exclude some things from the clipping plane, right? So if I go to the clipping plane that we make here, right? If I go here and I click on it, and I go to the properties, I can do exclude selected. So for under objects clipped over here, I can do exclude selected. All right. Then I click on objects. Okay. And so I'm going to exclude what I just split. So I want to exclude this and I want to exclude the frame right here like that. Okay. And then I actually split the ground plane as well. So I want to exclude that too. And then I press enter. Okay. So that's been excluded. Now, when I set this, so I can activate this like randomly, right? And so we're going to have something like this, okay? So you see how it's clipping through everything except these elements here, what I've excluded from the selection, the ground plane, right? The elevation and this frame right here. Everything else is being cut. Even here, you see it's being cut back here. But it's okay because this is a perspective elevation section. So it's going to be flat straight on. Now, the next important thing you want to do is you want to do orient camera to surface. So if I do orient camera to surface, right, I want to select this surface here, right? And then the arrow should be pointing at you, right? And I click it. So now I am directly parallel to this surface. So you see everything's flat and straight on, okay? I can zoom out, I can zoom in, I can pan, right? I can pan up so you look more on the top portion of your drawing, pan down to see more of the bottom portion of your drawing. It's really up to you, but you do not want to orbit, okay? If you orbit, you lose it. So what you want to do is after you do orient camera to surface, I would do a named view and just save the view immediately so you don't lose this view. And then I just click here. I'll call it our SPFA. So I already have this saved. Everything's set up, but just for this video. So now if I accidentally orbit, I can just type in my view and always take me back. Even if my clipping plane is turned off, right? Let me go here. Let's say I turn off my clipping plane and I type in my view, it'll always take me back. You see? And so now I am parallel to this. So like if I dimension this in real life, this would be a real dimension. It would be to scale because it's flat. Anything that's cut, it'll be to scale because it's in elevation flat, parallel to the clipping plane. Okay? So that's very important. So that's basically how you get like the perspective elevation. And so once you do this, you can play around a lot with how you portray your design. So this is one example. Let me just toggle quickly to another example. So this is the exact same project, but with a gabled roof instead. And so you see here, I have a pitched roof. And so I'm doing the exact same thing. Again, I think it looks nicer if I cut it down the middle, right down that, down the middle. It just makes it more direct and clean, but it's really a matter of preference. This one, I just wanted to do a little bit offset so you can see more inside the space. That's why I did that. So one important thing to also understand is where you place the clipping plane. So for example, I have this clipping plane very close to the edge of this elevation piece. So it makes it look like it's just a continuation of the elevation being cut. If you push it further back, it starts to make a distortion to that. But it's again a matter of preference. It doesn't, if I push this further back here, right, and I do the same thing, SPF, you see, it doesn't really read as a perspective elevation section anymore, because you're kind of cutting so far back that it doesn't read as like an immediate cut behind the elevation. So I typically like to keep the clipping plane as close as possible to where the elevation is. So it's like a direct relationship between the elevation and the section. Okay. So now when it comes to display styles, right? So if I go back here, if you notice, I have a bunch of display styles under different colors, right? So like this is like a blue format. It might lag a little bit, right? And this is a black background format. And this is a yellow. This is actually my favorite, the yellow one. This looks really elegant. And then, there's the red. These are all the same settings, just with different background colors, okay? So I'm gonna show you how to create this display style settings. So the first thing that you wanna do is you want to type in options, okay? And then you're going to go down to your display modes, right? If I scroll down the options, view, display modes, and you're gonna click on display modes, and then you're gonna click on monochrome, and you're gonna make a copy of monochrome, all right? So you click on it and make a copy. And then you're gonna give it whatever name you like. Like I'm calling these monochrome section and then the color scheme that I like monochrome section black, monochrome section red, yellow, whatever you like. And then you click OK. All right. I already have these settings saved, but you're gonna click OK. And then you're gonna go back into here and you're gonna set it to that display style. Okay. So we'll just stick on monochrome section red. All right. So then once you do that, I'm gonna type in options. The reason why you want to do that is because you want to see the updates live as you're modifying the settings. And then you're going to go and find that new copied monochrome, right? So we'll just do red. And I'm going to mark off the settings. It's really important. Number one, we're going to have a solid color, right? Background. And not pick the colors. Like I like to have a high contrast, but also monochrome. Meaning like if it's a red theme, I'm going to do all of the things with like a red color hue, for example. But the background's always going to be the darkest. Okay, so I have like this like almost burgundy color for a background. Okay, that's number one. Now for the ground plane, I don't have the ground plane on. The ground plane is off and there's no shadows. There's none of that. Okay. Same thing for shading settings. Nothing is shaded, right? Everything. And so you can copy this setting single objects for both backface and the color usage, right? But nothing is shaded. All right. And just as a reminder, I already made a video about this, but I'm just recapping. So for curves, right? This is optional if you want to show curves. Do not show hidden lines because it's going to create a memory nightmare because it's gonna take up so much memory. Show edges for sure because those are the edges of your surfaces. And silhouettes, that's optional. I like to show it. And then if you go down, these are all optional if you want to show your clipping plane and text annotation. These are all optional if you want to do that, okay? Now for lighting, I have it as ambient occlusion, but honestly, that doesn't even matter, but just you can copy it for now. There's one very important setting for lighting that you have to understand. Now, when you do monochrome, monochrome doesn't give you, surfaces or edges. It gives you curves and lines. So for lines, right, I'm doing like a much lighter color, okay? And I'm giving everything just a line weight of 1, okay? Nothing heavier than that. It's up to you if you want to go, but I personally don't want to go heavier, okay? So I do 1. It's going to be pretty light. And then the actual color is up to you for the actual edges and things like that. Again, I like to have high contrast so you're noticing the difference between the background and the actual geometry. Let me move it to this side like this. All right. Same thing with curves, even though that's optional if you want to show curves, if you want to keep it the color light or not. It's really up to you. Now, when it comes to clipping plane, all right, this is very, very important. I would say that these types of drawings only work best from the Rhino display setting if you are going to do a poche style. If you want to show a difference between the cut and the fill, I would not recommend doing this because it can kind of get a little messy and you have to have a very, very clean model. And in a studio, I guess a design school studio perspective, you should get into the habit of making very clean models, but you're under time constraints. The poche kind of makes everything just very easy. So if you notice, I only have show fills. I don't even have show edges checked. Only show fills is on. Okay. So this is really important to understand. And so the fill color, again, is going to be whatever color you like, right? Now, the most important thing are your shadows, all right? I have my shadows completely turned off. Honestly, you can have shadows turned off. You don't even need to have any of these settings. You can turn everything off if you wanted to. You don't need anything on here. But if you did have shadows on, it needs to be completely off for the shadow intensity. It just needs to be off because if you have it on, then things are going to be shaded, right? Things are going to be shaded in here and you won't see like this kind of illustration effect. So you just copy these settings where everything's basically the lowest, right? And then shadow intensity is 0, completely 0. Once you even if you make this 1%, you're going to start getting shading in here and you're going to lose like this illustration effect. Okay? And once you have the settings, that's it. You're pretty much done. And again, let me just toggle through and I'll show you examples of colors. My favorite is actually the yellow background with the dark and then the white and the blue. So these are my favorite. Now, one other setting that's really important to do is to do the print display. So I do print display. You should have your state as on, okay? And then I also do color display. And then I press enter. And now when I export this, I do view capture to file, okay? So I'll do view capture to file. And I definitely capture the viewport and then I make it custom. So I'll do viewport, custom, and then I'll upscale it from here. Make sure you lock your viewport. Do not do transparent, no transparent background, and then and bump up the scale as well. 2, 3, 2 or 3. It might make the line weight thinner, okay? So you might want to test this out and see how the line weights turn out. And then you do okay and save it as a PNG. And you're done. At the end of this video, I'll show you final exports with annotations. Let me just quickly toggle back to the other file and just show you the options you get. So again here, you're seeing, a gabled roof option, right? So for this one, you see I'm really pushing the clipping plane as close as possible. So it looks like it's a continuation. The further you push it back, it doesn't read as an elevation section anymore. So it's really important to understand. These things look really cool, like in terms of giving life to the space through illustration. And it's kind of on one end kind of very human in a sense. It's not like high rendered or high highly realistic renderings, you know? So just something to really think about. These are great for presentations, final presentations, architecture competitions, studio work. So again, something to really think about when it comes to presentation styles. But when you present things like this, like in my previous video, you have to be really consistent in what you're presenting. Okay. So like you can't just present this and then everything else in your project looks different, right? There needs to be a consistency in how you're representing your graphic style. So that's just something else to keep in mind when you do things like this. Again, I think these look great for architecture school, like architecture school presentations and architectural competitions and conceptual design of spaces and things like that. And again, once you have annotations on here, like you see, the annotations really gives it another layer of formality and presentation because text really helps. Grid lines help. Annotations help, as like a graphical element. So, I think one thing I'm missing on here are people. Like, I think if I had people on here, that's even better. But I forgot to add people on here. I hope you found this helpful. And if you have any comments or questions, just leave it in the comment section below. And please like and subscribe, so because I really want this channel to grow. And just to reiterate, I did make a video about this display style setting, but I kind of wanted to combine it with this view setting as well. All right. Thank you so much.